The morning rush at Grandview Central Station moved with its usual rhythm, tired eyes, coffee cups, and the screech of arriving trains. Announcements echoed over loudspeakers while thousands of footsteps drummed the polished floors. It was just another Thursday for most. But for Officer Daniel Ramirez and his K9 partner Rex, something felt off. Ramirez adjusted his uniform as they stepped onto Platform 6. He'd done this routine 100 times. He knew the route. So did Rex. The German Shepherd was one of the department's most reliable working dogs. Sharp, disciplined, and fearless. He'd sniffed out everything from narcotics to lost children. But today something was different. "Let's go," Ramirez said, patting Rex's side. The dog usually trotted ahead, nose close to the ground, tail alert. But not today. Rex stopped cold. Ramirez turned, eyebrows raised. "What is it, buddy?" The dog's ears twitched, and his nose tilted upward, sniffing the air with precision. A low, tense growl bubbled from his throat, not aggressive, but focused. Then, with sudden urgency, Rex darted to the left, ignoring Ramirez's command. "Entirely, Rex, heel!" The dog didn't listen. He shot across the platform like a bullet, startling a group of commuters. Several gasped and moved out of the way, as the dog zeroed in on a dark green suitcase sitting by a rusted trash bin. It looked old, nothing unusual, the kind of luggage you'd see abandoned by a careless traveler or left behind by mistake. But Rex wasn't confused. He lunged at the suitcase, barking furiously. His claws scraped against the side. His teeth tugged at the zipper. Ramirez ran to catch up, heart pounding. He'd worked with Rex for years and never had the dog reacted like this. "Step back," Ramirez yelled, waving his hand to nearby passengers. "Everyone back away from the platform now." Rex kept barking, more desperately now. Not aggressive, more like pleading. Ramirez's instincts kicked in. His hand reached for his radio. "This is Officer Ramirez on Platform 6. I've got a K9 alert on an unclaimed bag, requesting immediate backup, possible hazardous material." "Copy that, Ramirez. Bomb squad en route. ETA 10 minutes. Proceed with caution." More officers were arriving, pushing the growing crowd back. A few people had their phones out, recording. Others just stood in eerie silence, watching a dog act like someone was trapped inside that suitcase. Ramirez squatted down next to Rex and placed a hand on his collar. "Hey, what is it, boy? What are you trying to tell me?" Rex's tail was stiff, his body rigid. He wasn't barking anymore. Now he was whining, gently pawing at the bag like it held something fragile. Officer Linda Chen approached from behind. "That's not a bomb-sniffing alert," she said quietly. "That's his rescue signal." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. He looked at the suitcase again. Something inside shifted, barely, but enough to make the fabric ripple. "Did you see that?" he said. Chen nodded. "I saw it." Another whimper came from inside the suitcase. It was so soft it could have been the wind. But both officers heard it. So did Rex, who started licking the side of the bag, whining louder now, nudging. "Try it with his nose." "That's not a device," Ramirez muttered, his throat tightening. "Something's alive in there." Protocol said to wait for the bomb squad, but instinct and the look in Rex's eyes said otherwise. Ramirez's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the zipper. He looked once at Rex, who gave a small, encouraging whine. "Okay, boy," he whispered. "Let's see what you found." And with one slow, cautious pull, he began to open the suitcase. The zipper moved inch by inch, teeth parting with a dry, grating sound. Ramirez's heart pounded in his ears. Every officer nearby stood still, breaths held. Rex had gone silent, eyes locked on the suitcase, his entire body trembling, not in fear, but in something deeper. Urgency, protection, desperation. Only half of the suitcase had been unzipped when the smell hit them. It wasn't the sharp tang of chemicals or fuel, like a bomb. It wasn't rot either. It was faint but unmistakable. Damp cloth, sweat, something alive, or that had been alive recently. Ramirez paused for a heartbeat, then yanked the zipper the rest of the way down in one smooth motion, and then he saw them. 3 tiny bodies curled together in a tattered blue towel, no bigger than his palms. Their fur was damp, matted, Two were twitching, barely. The third wasn't moving at all. There was no food, no water, just a dark, airless prison. For a split second, Ramirez's mind refused to believe it. Puppies. Not a bomb, not drugs, puppies, and they were dying. "Oh my God," Officer Chen gasped behind him. She dropped to her knees. "They're alive, at least two of them." One pup let out a wheezy, heartbreaking cry. The sound cut through the silence like a scream in a church. Ramirez didn't hesitate. He reached in, his hands shaking gently, lifting the towel with all three inside. Their bodies were ice cold. One's ribs could be seen pressing against its fragile skin. Rex whined again and licked the edge of the towel, tail low, body lowered to the ground, like he knew exactly what was at stake. How long have they been in there? Someone muttered behind them. Ramirez looked around. "Who left this here?" he barked. "Check the cameras now. This was no accident." The suitcase itself was old but intact. No tags, no stickers, worn wheels. Whoever dumped it had done so, with intention, and vanished. But whoever they were, they hadn't counted on a dog like Rex. A nearby officer radioed dispatch. "We've got 3 puppies found inside a sealed suitcase. All appear to be newborns, possibly dumped alive. Requesting immediate veterinary response." As word spread, the platform began to change. It wasn't just a crime scene anymore. It became a rescue mission. One officer ran to grab a coat to wrap the pups. Another handed over a water bottle and a clean cloth. A transit employee knelt down, visibly crying. "They were just left here to die," she whispered. Ramirez didn't answer. He couldn't. His voice had thickened in his throat. He sat down on the cold tile floor, holding the towel close, his badge gleaming under the overhead lights. And inside it, 3 lives struggling for breath. Then, for a terrifying moment, the smallest puppy stopped moving entirely. "No, no, no," Chen said, reaching forward. She gently rubbed its tiny chest with her thumb. "Come on, sweetheart, you're not done yet." Rex let out a soft whimper and nudged her hand with his nose. And then, the tiniest twitch. A shiver, then a shallow breath. Everyone around them sighed as if they'd been holding their lungs in a vice. "She's still with us," Chen whispered. By now the crowd behind the police tape had grown. Phones were recording. Whispers of the word puppies spread like wildfire. But none of that mattered to Ramirez. All he could do was stare down at the towel in his arms, silently making a promise he wasn't even sure how he'd keep. "You're not dying today, not here, not like this." Rex sat beside him, quiet now, his job done for the moment. But something had changed. This wasn't just about what was inside the suitcase anymore. This was about who had put them there, and Ramirez was going to find them. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance as the animal rescue van tore through the city toward Grandview Central Station. Back on Platform 6, time was dragging like wet cement. For Ramirez, every second felt like an eternity. The puppies, 3 fragile, trembling lives, lay curled inside the towel against his chest. He could feel their tiny ribs rise and fall in shallow, uneven breaths. Rex sat close beside him, his body tensed like a soldier still on duty. Every now and then he'd lean in and gently sniff the towel as if checking in, making sure they were still fighting. A small crowd had formed beyond the police tape. Commuters who'd paused for the drama were now silent, some with hands over their mouths, others filming. One woman had tears streaming down her face. Another was angrily muttering about monsters and how could someone do this? But for Ramirez, there was only one thought. Why? Why go through the effort of putting them in a suitcase, zipping them up and walking away? It wasn't an act of neglect. It was deliberate. He turned to Officer Chen. This wasn't just someone who couldn't care for them. This was someone who wanted them gone. Quietly, without a sound. Chen nodded, eyes still on the pups. They didn't even give them a chance. A shout came from the other end of the platform. "We've got the footage," an officer called, waving a tablet. Ramirez stood quickly, still cradling the towel. Chen followed. They gathered around the screen, which showed grainy night footage from a fixed camera near the edge of Platform 6. At exactly 3:17 a.m., a figure emerged from the shadows, hooded, slouched, carrying something in their right hand, the suitcase. The person looked around quickly, head on a swivel, then walked briskly to the trash bin. They set the bag down beside it like it meant nothing, and walked away. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The whole act took just 21 seconds. "Zoom in," Ramirez said. The image sharpened a little, not much but enough to catch the edge of a tattoo peeking out from under the figure's sleeve, a snake around a wrist. Ramirez narrowed his eyes. "I've seen that ink before." Before he could speak another word, a piercing squeal pulled their attention back to the pups. The smallest one had gone still again. "No, not now." Chen rushed over, gently unwrapping the towel. The little body was limp, mouth barely parting. Its breathing was fading fast. Ramirez knelt down, his voice cracking. "Come on, girl, hang in there." Chen placed 2 fingers on its chest and rubbed in a gentle circle. She opened the water bottle and let a drop touch its tongue. It didn't respond. Then Rex stepped forward. He sniffed the pup, let out a quiet, low whine, then began licking its head slowly, tenderly, and then miraculously, the tiniest twitch. Its paw flexed, a cough, then another shallow, weak breath. A wave of emotion swept through the officers standing nearby. One of them audibly gasped. Another whispered, "That dog just brought her back." Ramirez blinked hard and smiled, despite the lump in his throat. "That's right, girl, you've got a job to do." Within minutes, the animal rescue team arrived. 2 women and a man in scrubs armed with heating pads, oxygen, and a mobile incubator. The puppies were transferred carefully, placed in warmth and light, as if they were being pulled back from the brink of death. Rex watched silently as they were taken away. "Let's go," Ramirez said to him, patting his side. "We've got someone to find." And just like that, the K9 duo turned toward the platform exit. The rescue had only just begun. The city felt heavier that afternoon. Even hours after the rescue, the weight of what had happened at Grandview Central Station hung over the precinct like a storm cloud. The footage had been passed to detectives, and facial recognition systems were combing through every frame. But as Ramirez drove to the emergency animal clinic, all he could think about was whether those tiny hearts were still beating. Rex sat. Beside him in the passenger seat, harness off, ears twitching with every passing sound. He wasn't resting. He was waiting, watching the road like he somehow understood where they were going. When they arrived, the clinic receptionist didn't even ask for his name. "They're in the back," she said softly, opening the door. A vet tech met them. Halfway down the hallway, she wore blue scrubs and her face was pale beneath tired eyes. "Are they alive?" Ramirez asked, not bothering with a greeting. The woman didn't speak at first. She opened a door and led them into a quiet room where 3 tiny incubators buzzed gently under warm lights. "They're alive," she finally said, but barely. Ramirez exhaled, the breath leaving him like he'd been holding it for hours. 2 of the puppies were moving, tiny legs twitching, mouths rooting instinctively. Monitors tracked their weak but present heartbeats. But it was the 3rd puppy, the smallest one, that made Ramirez pause. She was the same one that had nearly gone limp on the platform. The one Rex had licked back to life. Now she lay motionless inside a special enclosure, wires attached to her chest, an oxygen tube beside her muzzle. Her fur had been cleaned gently, revealing soft patches of white along her neck and paws. Her body was stildy, but her chest was rising and falling, barely. "She's the one we're worried about," the vet said quietly, nodding toward her. "We've named her Hope." Ramirez blinked. "Hope seemed fitting," the tech said, with a sad smile. She stopped breathing 3 times already. Rex stepped closer to the incubator, tail gently wagging. He lowered his nose to the clear plastic wall and let out a soft whine, the same way he had back on the platform. Hope didn't stir. "She knows he's here," the vet murmured. When he walked in, her vitals spiked. It's unusual but undeniable. Ramirez looked down at his partner, this dog who was trained to find bombs and drugs and danger, and wondered how in a single morning he'd become a hero in a completely different war. "I want to stay," Ramirez said. "At least until—" "I know she's stable. You can," the tech said. "We set up a room for you." Hours passed, the clinic dimmed for the evening, but Ramirez stayed. He paced, sat, checked the monitors again and again. Rex never left Hope's side. He lay down beside the incubator, head resting on his paws, eyes open, watching. At 1:12 a.m., a quiet alarm began to beep. Ramirez jumped to his feet. A nurse came running. So did the vet. Hope's oxygen levels were dropping. No, come on, baby girl, the vet muttered, adjusting the tube. She tapped on the syringe line, preparing an emergency stimulant, and just before she pushed, at a twitch, Hope's paw jerked once, then again. Her mouth opened slightly, the beat began to stabilize, slowly, softly, then rose. One more breath, then another. She had turned the corner. Everyone in the room let out a collective breath like a wave of relief had broken the tension all at once. "She's fighting," the vet whispered. Ramirez looked down at Rex, who hadn't taken his eyes off the puppy. "She's not fighting alone," he said. 2 days had passed since Rex found the suitcase. Hope was still fighting. The other 2 puppies, stronger now, had started making soft little yelps and attempting to crawl, proof that life was clawing its way back in. Volunteers had come forward to foster them. Donations poured into the clinic from strangers who had seen the story trending across social media. But Officer Daniel Ramirez wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because whoever zipped those puppies into that suitcase still hadn't been found. Back at the precinct, the mood was less hopeful. The grainy footage offered only one detail: the tattoo. A snake wrapped around a wrist. It wasn't enough for facial recognition, but it was enough to jog Ramirez's memory. "I've seen that ink before," he muttered again, flipping through. Old case files at his desk. Chen sat nearby, scrolling through a local database of known animal cruelty offenders. "This guy wanted to disappear," she said. "No IDs, no prints, no mistakes. He didn't just dump them, he tried to erase them." Ramirez stopped on a photo, a mugshot from 3 years ago. A man named Jason Breck, arrested in an illegal dogfighting ring takedown. The same smug face, the same serpent tattoo, coiled tight around the wrist like a warning. He held the photo up. "Jason Breck," Chen leaned in. "Didn't he serve time?" 2 years, Ramirez said. "Got out early. Claimed he was done with dogs." "Yeah, looks like he was." The more they dug, the worse it got. Breck had been under investigation for breeding fighting dogs under horrific conditions. Multiple raids had uncovered malnourished animals, some chained, some dead. And now the theory was starting to come together. "He bred a litter," Chen said, voice flat. 3 females, too small to fight, so he dumped them. Ramirez's jaw tightened. He didn't just dump them. He tried to bury them, quietly, painlessly, for him. At that moment, a knock sounded on the precinct's glass door. A woman stepped in, mid-30s, nervous, arms folded. I heard about the puppies," she said softly. "I think I might know who left them." Ramirez and Chen stood up immediately. "Come with us," Ramirez said gently. Inside the interview room, the woman introduced herself as Rachel, Jason Breck's former girlfriend. "He's sick," she said, voice trembling. "I left him a week ago. He kept telling me he'd get rid of the weak ones. I didn't think he meant like that." She wiped her eyes. "I begged him to let me take the pups. He said no one wanted broken dogs. Then 2 nights ago I woke up, and he was gone. The suitcase too." Chen leaned forward. "Do you know where he is now?" She nodded. "He has a garage on 9th and Wilder. I think he's staying there, hiding out." Ramirez stood instantly. "We're moving now." Within minutes they had a warrant, backup, and a convoy en route. Ramirez felt the tension build in his chest like coiled wire. The thought of that man, casually tossing away living beings, was more than infuriating. It was personal now. Because Rex didn't just sniff out danger, he sniffed out injustice, and someone had to answer for it. At 4:19 p.m., officers surrounded the rusted garage. 1 knock, no answer. Then came the command. "Police, open the door." Silence, then the battering ram. The door burst open, and what they found inside made everyone freeze, not just Jason Breck, but 4 more puppies, in a crate, shivering, crying, starving, and this time, they weren't alone. Breck sat in a chair in the corner, a cigarette still burning in his fingers. He didn't even flinch. Ramirez stepped forward. "You're under arrest for felony animal cruelty, illegal breeding, and attempted destruction of life." Breck laughed coldly. "They're just dogs," he said. Ramirez's voice was ice. "No, they're survivors, and you're done." By the next morning, it wasn't just a story anymore. It was everywhere. News channels looped the security footage of Officer Ramirez and Rex opening the suitcase. The photos of the tiny puppies, barely alive, were plastered across websites, TikTok, and morning shows. Rex, the canine hero, had his own trending hashtag, Rescue Rex, and nestled at the center of the media storm was a single image that went viral faster than anyone expected. A shot of Ramirez sitting cross-legged on the cold train platform, holding the towel-wrapped puppies close while Rex sat beside him, alert and loyal. The caption, "A suitcase full of heartbreak, and one dog, who refused to walk past it." It hit people like lightning. Within hours, the animal clinic's donation page crashed under the weight of support. Thousands of dollars poured in. Messages arrived from around the world, offers to adopt the puppies, to volunteer, to help fund the search for other abandoned animals like them. But for Ramirez, the only thing that mattered was hope. She was still in the incubator, still fighting, still small and quiet, but alive. Ramirez visited her every morning before his shift and every evening before going home. Rex came too, and every time he'd sit beside her, resting his nose near the clear wall, letting out the softest whines like a lullaby only she could hear. "She recognizes his scent," the vet explained one night. "When Rex is nearby, her heart rate steadies, her breathing improves. It's like he's her anchor." Chen joked, "You better start writing his autobiography." But even she was holding back tears when they arrived that Friday morning and found Hope standing. She was wobbly, tiny, barely the size of a rolled-up sock. But she was upright, her paws planted, tail twitching like she wasn't quite sure what it was for. "She stood up for 3 seconds before you came in," the nurse beamed. "It's like she was waiting for him." Rex approached the glass. Hope looked right at him and took a single slow step toward his direction. The room went silent. "She's going to make it," Ramirez whispered. Later that night, outside the clinic, Chen walked beside him as they headed back to the precinct. The moonlight reflected on the sidewalk and the air smelled faintly of summer grass. "She's going to have a good life," Chen said quietly. "She deserves one," Ramirez replied. "But we both know she'll never be just a pet." He paused, then looked at her. "You're thinking what I'm thinking?" Chen nodded. "Canine unit, therapy or detection. Whatever she's meant for, we train her." A silence passed between them, not of doubt, but of awe. "Hope," Ramirez said, almost to himself. "The dog that came out of a suitcase, and into people's hearts," Chen added. The next day a press conference was held. The station was packed. Rex was presented with a medal of civic bravery, a large silver coin engraved with the words, "In silent vigil, you spoke for the voiceless." When Ramirez took the mic, he didn't speak long. "There's evil in this world," he said. "We see it every day, but sometimes it takes the shape of a hero, covered in fur, walking on 4 legs, saying nothing, but doing everything the same." Crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. But as Ramirez stepped back, he looked out toward the horizon, because he knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something even bigger, something that couldn't be zipped away and forgotten. Something that would change lives, including his. 6 weeks had passed since that rainy morning on Platform 6. Hope had doubled in size. She still wasn't the biggest pup in the litter. Her sisters, now in loving foster homes, were bouncing with energy. But there was something different about Hope. Something in her eyes. She didn't bark much, didn't rush around like most puppies. Instead, she studied the world with quiet curiosity. Ramirez saw it every time he visited her at the training center, where other dogs bounded at balls or scrambled over hurdles. Hope would stop and sniff the air as if searching for something invisible, a flicker of sound, a whisper of scent. "She's tracking," Ramirez said one afternoon, arms folded as he watched through the mesh fence. The trainer beside him nodded. Naturally, no cues. She's got Rex's nose. Hope had been accepted into the early socialization program at the Canine Unit's Academy, not because she was special, but because she had survived. The director made an exception, and none of the officers argued. In fact, the unit had rallied around her. She's not just a trainee, Chen had joked. She's a legend already. But there were hurdles. Hope was still undersized. She had respiratory flare-ups. Her muscles developed slower. And unlike other pups, she hesitated around confined spaces, suitcases, carriers, even doors. Ramirez never pushed her. Instead, he brought Rex. Every training session, every vet checkup, every car ride, wherever Hope went, Rex was there, her silent guardian, her steady heartbeat. Then came the day that changed everything, a simulation drill. Hope had been selected to participate in a low-pressure exercise, tracking a scent through a maze of boxes and crates. Most of the pups had failed. They'd gotten distracted or overwhelmed. Hope? She walked right in. Her nose dropped low, her ears tilted forward. No barking, no hesitation. She weaved through the course slowly, methodically, like she was born for. Dead at the end of the path was a sealed box with a hidden cloth inside, marked with human blood. A training proxy for search and rescue. Hope reached it in under 4 minutes. She sat down quietly and pawed at the box once, and then looked directly at Ramirez. The instructor's mouth dropped open. "I haven't seen a dog do that at her age," he said. "Not even Rex." Word spread fast. Hope had potential, real potential. The precinct started receiving calls from agencies interested in her progress. Some suggested she become a therapy animal for survivors. Others said she should be part of a new generation of scent detection canines trained for missing persons cases or disaster sites. But Ramirez had already made up his mind. "She stays with us," he told the captain. "With me. With Rex." And so it was made official. Hope was inducted into the Canine Unit as a probationary canine trainee. At only 4 months old, she had her own badge, sized comically small, her own custom vest stitched with the word survivor, and her own following on social media. People watched her grow, train, and overcome. She became more than just a puppy found in a suitcase. She became a symbol. A month later, Ramirez took her to an elementary school where they were teaching kids about animal safety. One little boy with big glasses asked, "Is that the Hope?" Ramirez smiled. "She sure is." The boy reached out timidly, and Hope, calm and gentle, rested her head in his lap. The entire class melted into awes. Afterward, the teacher whispered, "That little boy has autism. He's never let a dog touch him before." Ramirez looked down at Hope, who was now curled around the boy like she'd known him forever. "That's what she does," he said softly. "She doesn't bark. She listens." The courtroom was packed, not because Jason Breck was important, but because Hope was. It had been nearly 4 months since the police found her zipped inside a suitcase, lifeless and discarded. 4 months since a canine named Rex refused to walk past that case. 4 months since the world had watched a puppy claw her way back from the edge and become something greater. Now justice stood waiting. Jason Breck, wearing a plain suit and a scowl, sat beside his public defender. The charges were stacked: felony animal cruelty, illegal breeding, attempted destruction of life, and obstruction of justice. The prosecution had built an airtight case with witness testimonies, recovered animals, and overwhelming digital evidence from his own devices. But the most powerful witness of all, she padded into the room on 4 quiet paws. Hope, fully grown now, her fur gleamed, her custom vest reading Canine Trainee, Hope, in navy blue and gold. She moved slowly but confidently, her gait steady, her eyes forward. A quiet ripple passed through the courtroom. Breck's eyes narrowed, but his face twitched, just slightly. The first crack in his mask. Hope didn't bark. She didn't growl. She just looked at him, and then turned away, walking toward Ramirez and resting at his feet. The moment was silent, but it thundered in the hearts of everyone present. The judge spoke. "Mr. Breck, you chose to dispose of life as if it were waste, but the life you tried to erase stood back up. And today, She does so not as a victim, Hannah, but as a symbol. He was sentenced to 12 years without parole. There were no cheers, no applause, only the weight of justice settling into place. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters crowded. The steps. But Ramirez didn't stop to give speeches. He simply knelt beside Rex and Hope, one hand on each, and smiled for the photo that would travel across the world. One man, one dog, one survivor. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Hope was formally inducted as a certified therapy K9, specializing in trauma recovery. She began working in children's hospitals, visiting abuse shelters, and even attending grief therapy sessions alongside Rex. One evening, Ramirez watched as a teenage girl who had been silent for days reached out and hugged Hope tightly, whispering into her ear. That girl later told her therapist, "If Hope can survive, maybe I can too." That became Hope's silent mission, not detection, not defense, but healing. She was invited to speak, or rather to be present, at events about animal welfare. Organizations used her story to push for harsher penalties against animal abusers. Donations skyrocketed. New rescue centers were funded. A national foundation was created under her name, the Hope Initiative, dedicated to finding, fostering, and rehabilitating abandoned animals. Ramirez sometimes stood on stage at these events, looking down at his loyal companion, still slightly undersized, still soft-eyed, still calm in every storm, and he'd say, "She wasn't supposed to make it, but here she is, changing the world, one heartbeat at a time." Years later, that image of a suitcase on a platform remained burned into the minds of many. But so did something else. The girl who walked out of that suitcase, tail wagging, badge shining, changing lives, not with barks or bites, but with presence, because the greatest power Hope ever had was refusing to give up and teaching others never to do the same.